Okay, let's see where this drawing is now. Right, what I've done is I've worked with the background some more, overlapping the green with the blue with the black. I've also worked down here and worked some more of that orange and green and black into the reflection. And I've also fooled with my edges to make them clearer. Now, to make them clearer, you have to take turns working the edge by working in the negative space. What I did here is I used the flat side of my black, sometimes the short side, sometimes the long side, and I placed the pastel right next to the edge and I pulled away here and pulled away. So like I said, sometimes I used the short end depending on where I was working and pulled across, and that chips away at sharpening the edge, you know, because if you're only using the inside, the red, to sharpen the edge, what happens is each time you might go over the boundary, and then your apple can get bigger and bigger and bigger. So always remember to deal with edges, and this is the same for painting, is don't forget, clarify your edge by working the negative space. I'll do it again over here. Right here, lay it right against the edge of the apple and pull away. Here, and pull away gently. If you use too much pressure, then of course it's going to lay too much black down where you don't want it, and that'll help clean the edge up. I mean, you are going to have to sometimes go inside, but you don't want to try to always fix the edge by working on the inside. Okay, so I also added more shadow, and I also started to add light that was paler, because if I look at my image, I see the highlight not being a real brilliant white. There is a brilliant white here, and when you want your brilliant white, you have to place it heavily. So instead of scratching it on, you press it on, and that will give you a more brilliant white. Okay, so I did scrub a little, and that made it pink or a soft white, and then I've come back and I put a few flecks of more brilliant white in there so that there's a different intensity of light. I've also taken the yellow, and I've also kind of created or simulated the texture that we see by speckling the light yellow to help suggest that kind of pattern that we see of speckling in the apple's surface. Okay, now if it's too intense, well, what can you do? You can come back with your Q-tip and just hit the tops of them, and that'll kill the intensity and not make them quite so white. The other thing that will happen in situations like this, if you are spraying your drawing with fixative, it will knock off a little of the color intensity to fine-tune it closer to what you want to do. So it's basically about 2 hours of work, maybe even a little less than that or a little more. I still want to play with this reflection down here. This shadow that engulfs it probably comes a little further over to engulf the lighter colored side. Again, I'm just lightly pulling over the shadow from here, pulling it over, just like we did in the pepper drawing where we used negative space to help formulate our positive shapes. And every now and then you're going to have a speck that's stubborn, well then you can use your finger. And I know I can't be there with you, so I know that some of you will want to smear, and that's fine, but just remember you're taking color off. And what's the sense of doing a color drawing in pastel if you're diminishing the color intensity by blending? So if you blend, okay, do it, but you may always want to remember to come back and intensify the color again so that it becomes juicier in the drawing and enlivens it with the variation. So I'm going to probably pick on this just a little more, cut down some of the graininess by crisscrossing some of my application of pastel some more. You know, don't ever just do it in one direction. Crisscross, wiggle it, especially in larger areas like this, so you don't get so heavily handed with your direction. Just like in painting backgrounds and just moving the brush horizontally, it usually jumps out at you, because normally if you're painting the apple, you're going to need to move the brush in different directions, and then that heavy-handed directional brushwork is going to stand out. Well, you can get directional with your pastel as well, so you want to make sure you keep an eye on that. And what can be a little distracting sometimes is when you're working on this is this border. So what I'm going to do is just come back and clean that up to make the boundary more pronounced. Whatever you do, you know, you're going to need to cut down the paper in size. Just make sure you end up with an appropriate shaped rectangle so that you don't end up with so much top space up above or too much space on one side. You want to try to keep it within the same shape as the original image, somewhat squared. I would call it a squared rectangle. So I'm just going to use the edge of my eraser, clean that up. Same thing here at the top, and that'll tidy it up some. And then of course I would cut some of this extra off as well. It's always nice to leave yourself a little room so that you can clean off your pastel, check the color, because when you bunch them all together in a box, they kind of shed color onto one another. So before you use it, wipe them off with a paper towel or clean them on the side of the paper and then go to town with it. Alright, so hang in there with this image. I'll send it to you and you can begin, and then I'll send you another demonstration with a different approach in terms of composition for using color, in which you're not really filling the drawing with pastel but just isolating and concentrating on the development of your subject matter, in which case we'll be using figures, human figures as subject matter, and do them in a much quicker, what we would say more gestural way, so that they won't be as time consuming as this type of application of pastel, just so that you have a broad range of approaches to dealing with pastel. Now, this is the last topic we'll cover, is color. And then that'll be it for the end of the semester. I'm going to give you till Friday at 5 p.m. to turn in your 10 drawings. Now the best way to do that is by doing a PowerPoint. Okay, you don't have to label them, just like I did with the critique that I sent out yesterday. Is just take your images and you photograph them with your phone just like you've been doing, and then just cut and paste them onto a screen, a slide. And you'll have 10 slides, or if they're small drawings, maybe you can put 2 on one slide and send them to me. And of course your email will identify who you are, so I'll know whose drawings are whose. Okay, if you have any questions, if you're not quite sure about how to do a PowerPoint, email me and I'll explain it to you and continue working on this. And I'm going to give you another demonstration tomorrow that you'll use, and that'll be the last demo to cover the projects for the remainder of the semester. And tomorrow, after tomorrow's demo, I'll also send out images. But for right now, this first one is just going to be this simple apple. Okay, and then I may send a couple of extras that you can use as another image to work this way. Okay, and I'll do the same with the figures tomorrow, and that'll be it. All right, thank you. Hang in there. We're down the home stretch.